So back in the late 90s, I was living in Indianola, this little town on the peninsula, the Kitsap Peninsula, and one of my best friends, Tup Wright, was living in Seattle, and he would come over from the city, and I would pick him up at the Kingston Ferry, and then driving to my house in Indianola, and we'd always drive past this place called Crazy Corners. It's a little store and kind of where the I don't know the names of the highway, two highways cross, kind of near the Hood Canal Bridge. And we were both always we would speculate because there was these huge chainsaw carved statues, and we'd never really seen anything like that, and one of them was like like, it was like a fish wearing jeans, eating an ice cream cone, and we were always like, "What the fuck?" I mean, what is the impetus for that? Who created that? And so we kinda created this whole narrative about this genius, chainsaw artist, and we started talking about we should look into this, and we should make a documentary about chainsaw art, because it's kind of the last stronghold of rugged individualism. It came out of commercial logging went tits up, and suddenly you had all these unemployed loggers with chainsaws, and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna carve a bear on the side of the road and sell it for gas money." So we decided to make a movie, and you're gonna recognize the title here. It was called West of Here, which of course was one of my novels, and before that was also the name of a Ramadillo, the band demo cassette. So we went to the 2000 Westport Chainsaw Competition in Westport, Washington. This sort of like it's kind of the ass end of the Washington coast. It's kind of like, imagine Aberdeen as a coastal town. It's not exactly like the French Riviera or anything, but they're having this big competition there. And so Tup and I went with our gear, our Sony cameras and stuff like this to make this documentary. And what we found is not what we expected there. We found this incredible community of super supportive people who had created a culture unlike anything I'd ever really experienced, short of, I mean, when you follow the Grateful Dead around, there's kind of always a little village that goes along with it. But these people were pretty incredible. And at the center of this was one of the organizers, who was this big bear of a man, gregarious, ribald, heart of gold, named Steve Backus. And Steve is ever since the documentary, this is kind of a Chris Wiltshire, if you remember our story about Chris Wiltsh's failed documentaries a while back. This is my Chris Wiltshire story. The documentary never got made, but those of you on the Substack will be able to look at a little trailer we put together to get an idea. Well, Steve has now written a couple of memoirs, and Steve grew up as a tramp logger. His dad, Dirty Dick Backus, was a character of some ill repute. And on the back of his memoir, this is what I say about Steve Backus. I say, Steve Backus is nothing less than a folk hero in these parts. An intrepid artist, an indomitable spirit, not to mention one of the kindest human beings you're likely to meet. A man who would literally give you the chain off his saw. I'm not sure I've ever met an individual as indispensable to his community than Steve is to the carving community. Something I've witnessed firsthand over the past 20 years is Steve has time and again put his health and welfare of his career, the carver community, above his own needs or profits. Steve is the ultimate impresario, part storyteller, part historian, part clown, and part action hero. His stories are full of heart, hilarity, history, and you'll be a better person having read them. Please welcome this week's Fresh Face in Hell, my old friend, Steve Backus. Steve, welcome, old friend.
Hello.
So 25 years I've known you now, and I haven't lost any respect for you over that time, which is an accomplishment. I've got to know Nono, your wife Nanette, your mom, Judy, your uncle Pat, and your sister Lynn. And I know much about your family history just from verbal tellings, and now these two wonderful memoirs. You've got to be shitting me. And of course, your slogan in life, Carve or Starve.
I don't really look prosperous.
I really loved reading these books, dude, because they're just so no bullshit. It seems to me that your storytelling really comes out of the oral tradition. You were raised basically by tramp bloggers as a young man, and like reading your life is basically like you're like this little wide-eyed kid. It's kind of like that book, The Tender Bar by J.R. Moringer or whatever, except the bar is way, way more
Lower.
yeah, the bar is a lot more squalid. But like you were a big-eyed kid just listening to these logging tramp stories, and What was that like for you? I mean, how old are you when you're I mean, you could go in bars back then, and these are logging trips. This is Alaska or where did this just take us from the
Well,
beginning.
we moved from like we were lived in Southern Oregon, Northern Oregon around Gearhart. Moved to Aberdeen. I started school in the Grays Harbor area, and Aberdeen back in the '60s was just like Aberdeen, Reedsport, Eureka were the big logging communities on the West Coast, and that's where they all went to. And you could go in the bars as a kid in Alaska, not so much in Washington, although Dick would let me if I could have, for sure. And they but his wherever he lived, it was the tramp loggers. They were just like the name implies. They wandered. They would go from one job to the other. And Dick Backus always had a couch and a bag of beans and a jug of whiskey. So sometimes there would be a half a dozen of them in there. They never drank anything, didn't have a handle on it for sure. And they would just tell the stories of, where they worked and who they hung out with and how people tragically died, usually with a little bit of dark humor. And, they explain they weren't all, some were kind of philosophical, but not all of them.
Well, like, I mean, you're obviously a very empathetic person, but like the tellings of your stories are pretty matter of fact. There's like really some pretty heavily traumatic stuff in there. And I just wonder, you just seem so forgiving of Dirty Dick Backus, who is a deadbeat by any standard. And I mean, there's stories where, 8 puppies are shot by a drunk guy and the neighbor's cat. And it's just kind of like, that's how you took care of the puppy problem there. And yet your telling of the story is pretty matter of fact, but the point of the story was, here you and your little sister are watching these puppies be shot, and, basically, kind of the point is that it made your sister into this she saved everything. She grew up and she just saved every stray animal, every stray sea so, like, but this
And a few
trauma
people.
yeah, from this trauma was born, like, you're just such a big-hearted dude, and, like, I'm just so impressed that you survived this stuff, that you've survived, uh,
I learned how
and
to forgive easily. I don't forget easily. But you gotta learn how to forgive easily for yourself and others, or else you're all pissed off all the time, and I see people that are all pissed off all the time, and I think they should practice that a little bit more.
so, I mean, your beginnings they're humble. I mean, between Amanda Park, which is out by Lake Quinault, and Hump Tulips, you were raised almost entirely by your mom with your sister, your mom was tough, man. I mean, she in a predominantly male world of logging culture and, coastal Washington, a lot of poverty, a lot of,
And we were poor white trash living in the trailer house too.
yeah, well, there's one, but I think there's one story in general that kind of illustrates like what your mom was up against and what a badass she was. And it took place at, tell us a little bit about the Oxbow Tavern.
The Oxbow Tavern, lies midway between Lake Quinault, Amanda Park, and Aberdeen and Hoquiam. And in those days, they'd had a couple gas pumps out front, and as kids, you could turn in beer bottles to get money, because recycling was still a thing at that point. And so, it seemed to be an inexhaustible form of revenue in the neighborhood if you went around and collected them up, and we were, Judy would give us a ride up there. We were parked by the back door, unloading the boxes of beer bottles. And a couple, drunks came out. It was like a Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning. It is elk season, so a lot of the people from the city and stuff would come down and go elk hunting and then drink all night, essentially. And they'd stopped in there, and they came marching out of there and jumped in their truck, and they roared out of there right past us. My sister had to jump out of the way, and my mom grabbed a beer bottle quick as a cat and threw it at the truck. She threw it at the truck. She would have hit the truck. That's what she's aiming at, but it busted on the ground next to it. And the brake lights come on, and he backs up and he jumps out with a big knife and says, "You want to get gutted, you bitch?" And she grabbed a long neck Budweiser bottle and busted the neck off and had a jagged piece of glass in her hand and says, "If you hit my kids, I'll fucking cut your guts open and strangle you with them." And he lost, and he jumped in the truck and off that he went. The bar owner had seen this go down, came out, said, "You want me to call the cops?" And she's like, "Nah, they'll take forever to get here." And And he says, well, he knew that she'd been carving and doing stuff. So I said, well, I need a big sign. I got these nice big boards for the Oxbow Tavern. Would you do it? And she said, well, hell yes. And that's where her first big job. And that Oxbow Tavern sign, they were like 30 feet long and they were up there for 40 years. In it, anyone that knows about the Oxbow Tavern and all it was a stopping point for everybody in that, it was the kind of the local community's front room, if you will. Kids could go in that bar. We could go in there at a restaurant on one side. And
So your mom is you've got she's the matriarch of the tramp loggers, basically. And on the other side, you've got a father who is, I mean, he is a rogue, just straight out of Steinbeck, dude. As I read this, I just think he's like Mac or one of the boys from Cannery Row. Again, this guy is a deadbeat by I mean, he's a raging alcoholic, terrible role model, exploitive parent, just really kind of, but yet somehow you deliver us a sort of beloved guy. Somehow, I mean, like, how do you, as somebody who's just like really hard on his old man, I'm hard on deadbeat dads in general, but how are you so forgiving of him? I mean, you credit him with making you tough, basically, or making a survivor out of you. But like your stories are kind of lovingly told, and these are stories of him like taking you to prison, and I mean, like,
there was he was there was a generous side to him that a lot of people he would completely fuck up when we were older, and we'd have to run him off because when we got all of age, all of us kids, he had a little trap line. He'd go live with me for a couple of months, go live with my sister for a couple of months, and we weren't mad at him. We're never mad. The forgiveness thing. He'd fuck up, he'd take off, then he'd show back up a couple months later with a bottle of wine and a sack of groceries, and he we spent more Christmases together as a family well after when we were in our 20s and 30s than we ever did as kids with him. Because him and Judy, they were like adversaries, but they weren't mean and mad at each other about it. They both moved on. And she got married a couple more times, and he told her once, well, I didn't marry anyone, and you ran off and married everybody. But
yeah, well, and he wasn't great with child support either.
not so
And that
good.
shit, yeah. So your mom was very forgiving too. Like the whole tramp logging culture thing is something I don't think people really understand. Again, I just keep coming back to Steinbeck. This culture. Like, talk to me about this is the '60s we're talking about. What happened? You had all these loggers scattered up and down the West Coast, Oregon and Washington in particular. But like, what happened when they opened up the Songus Forest in Southeast Alaska
When they
for
opened up,
logging?
when Alaska became a state, the whole dynamic changed, and the federal government opened up the Tongass Forest in 59, 60. So the logging started to take off there. By the end of the 60s, it was a full on thing. These loggers, they would just go from Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and then Alaska became, because you got paid better up there because it was longer, harder work. And
But it's basically like migrant farm workers from
pretty much,
I mean,
pretty
guys
much.
just have a rucksack over your back and a chainsaw and just on to the next town. Like,
Dick said that you could, if you had a pair of cork boots around your shoulders and you were hitchhiking on 101 anytime in the 1950s or 60s, you could get a ride and you'd be working that afternoon because
and
some logger would pick you up and hire you.
this again, this whole culture is very forgiving of the raging alcoholism that marks it. Like chainsaws and alcoholism just don't seem like a really good mix. But like, how does this work? I mean,
Well,
these are.
you couldn't drink in camp. And in those days, camps, even in the lower 48, Washington, Oregon, California, there were camps. They go out there and you couldn't drink in camp. It was, you couldn't do it. And I remember Dick and Marvin, the guys telling stories of so and so would come out and he'd be all snaky, DTs, delirious trivers, come in from town and he's got no booze and he'd be going snaky. And he said what they'd do is they'd lock him in a room for a couple days, a lot of crashing and noise in there, put some food under the door, and they'd either kind of sober up and you could put them in the woods to go to work, or you put them on a plane back to town. But they would literally lock them in a room.
So you got like 30, 40 guys in a camp, and this would be characterized as a Jippo logging crew, right? Like much different than
No, the Jippalaga crews would have been more in the lower 48. I would say there was more smaller independent. The bigger camps were run by probably corporations, I suppose.
okay, but I mean, nowadays you have a processor that can basically do the work of 30 dudes, right? I
Oh,
mean,
hydraulic equipment has put more men out of work than any owl
yeah, for
by
sure.
far,
And
by
this has
far.
happened twice to logging. I mean, the steam donkey did the same thing at the turn of the last century. Um, and this is kind of where chainsaw art, this is sort of the genesis, right? Logging kind of hits the skids in the 80s. I mean, I know it goes back further with your family, the carving, but it seems like it gained more popularity when the logging industry kind of went tits up and you had all these guys. It's like, I've got the skill, I got a chainsaw. All of a sudden, you start seeing them popping up at parking rides selling bears and stuff like that. I mean, is that right? I mean, is
Right
it?
next to the guy selling the velvet paintings, yes.
So this is like necessity is a mother of invention type of
Well,
thing.
I believe the chainsaw carving is art is the art that grew out of the timber industry. Almost like every industry has an art form that kind of grows out of it. And obviously, the tool itself was targeted at the loggers. And when they're not using it to go out and do their work, try something else. And some of them has some pretty good artistic qualities about them. Maybe hidden talents. And you could go out and carve a bear and sell it and get some money. And especially Western Washington and up and down the Oregon coast, Northern California is where you saw the proliferation of carvings. And we kind of fed off the edge of the timber industry with their scraps. So real literally, what they don't use because you never could afford to go out and buy the good stuff. So you got to take what's left over. So he became very good at making silk purses out of sow's ears.
And so, like, the bear's kind of the most fundamental. That's usually where people start because it's kind of more, it's kind of a simple figure compared to, say, a merman with an erection and a bunch of, suckerfish circling around the bottom of it.
It seems that, and it's not even limited to America at this point. Bears are popular every culture that's picked up chainsaw carving, which would be English, Germans, and Japanese.
Well, and Russians love bears.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and the Russians, they have some pretty big events over there these days. I had a German guy would tell me one time when I was in Germany that and I was a judge at a nice sculpture contest, which I find very endearing that a high school hillbilly dropout can be a judge at a fine European sculpture contest.
I was a
Anyway,
judge once.
he said,
Thanks to you.
"Well, you did, yes, it's tough, isn't it?"
Yeah,
But he said that,
especially when you know the people. There's
yeah, that guy's a
always
prick.
always the possibility of a little social blowback, and
German guy said, Andreas puts on Blockhausen, said that he thinks that chainsaw art is one of the art forms that America exported to the world, and he's right.
now you've got women carvers, Australian carvers. I feel like it's growing in popularity globally, but maybe shrinking domestically. Would that be? I mean, I just
No, no, I don't
no.
see anything it's multi-generational now. I mean, I'm carving at shows, even at Squim when I was over there. Charlie Campbell, he's about 30 years old now. Him and his dad and I were the carvers, the young carvers back in the day, and Charlie was a baby in a baby carriage. He's at a show now with his baby in a baby carriage, carving with me. So there's what's happened with the chainsaw carving. It seems to run in families. Our family was just early innovators, if you will. But any young carver these days aiming at it could make one hell of a career out of it. The arc is going to be long because it's picking up because of the social medias, because of the internet, and all that kind of stuff is a big deal. And the competitions, they have been the driving force behind the popularity and the spread, if you will.
As I talked about in the opening, I met you because we wanted to make that documentary
Yeah.
about chainsaw carvers because me and Tup would always drive by Crazy Corners there in Kingston, and we would see this fucking chainsaw. It was like, it was like a fish in jeans eating an ice cream cone, and I'm like, "Well, I gotta find out what was the muse for that? Like, what kind of guy does chainsaw?" And so
That's the running of the salmon. Is the
oh,
salmon with running feet. That was carved by Terry Tismer, who is still he carves up at
I
Fat
remember
Smitty.
Terry. I
He
guess I
carves
never
at
really.
Fat Smitty's, to this day up there at, Discovery Bay.
Oh, okay. Well, we all know the giant cheeseburger
Yeah.
at Fat Smitty's and the Smitty himself. So, like, the carving itself, there's just a countless, like, writing. I mean, countless different styles. Some of the carvers I remember, like, Conrad Sandoval he had a little more of a fine art vibe.
Yeah.
I remember there was
Self-taught. Self-taught.
self-taught, and he also
Yeah.
had a penchant for sneaking redwood in for his, I remember them being a little controversy at a few things because he was carving better wood. And then you've got more of a playful, folky vibe, just really, I don't know, like you yourself. Your style is just sort of an embodiment of you. And then your Uncle Steve is kind of somewhere in the middle. He's got kind of a Pat, you're Steved up. Kind of a classical vibe, but also sort of fun and playful. Where do the
He's in the
individual?
fine art end of things as well, for sure. He's
Yeah,
kind of the wine and cheese guy, and I'm more the, beer and Ford pickup guy, but we're 2 sides of the same coin.
yeah, I know. I had 12 of you guys up at my cabin once in Squim, and you wouldn't even go in the house. They're like, "No, we like garages." So we just partied out in the garage. We had a clam bake, about 12 of you, and as I recall, you ended up you went after it hard. You
I
went
believe I
Frank.
got tired and had to retire early.
Yes, tired. You went Frank the Tank on me, and you were sleeping in your truck inside about 2 hours. Um, so, like, let's talk about the individual voices. I mean, the context is a little different from you because you kind of grew up with chainsaw art. You know what I mean? You come
I
from a
do.
family of carvers, so the art part of it is over there. But then there is a lot of these guys who don't know they have an artistic bone in their body until they kind of need to make some money, and they're like, "Hey, I can carve a bear, and I can hide." I mean, talk to me about like watching some of these guys grow from unemployed loggers to, like, legit, like, self-taught artists.
It's been interesting, especially in this day and age with Facebook Marketplace. I see a lot of the younger carvers, they get on there and they put it on there, and until I meet them when they go to a show, and a lot of them don't have to go to the shows, but once they do, and they get hooked to the guts by being part of the biker Viking tribe, and then you can't get rid of them. And the shows become the basically, the gypsy camps that we set up and we make money there by the shows, we make money at them, and we also create an energy that's there that people come to watch us because the very act of doing a chainsaw carving is performance art all by itself. And then you get to sell the stuff. And then if you get some newbie in there, they do a couple bears, and it's a pretty encouraging group of people with tools and advice, and they'll make some money, and they'll go home and pay a bill, and they just gotta keep going. If you're doing it for a living, it's harder along the lines of when it becomes a job because you're maybe
Uh,
spearing 2 more
yeah.
bears, writing too many words, but
Mhm.
to keep that fun element in it is, for an example, I went to a contest just last weekend in Cedar Woolley, where I've been carving in the competition end of it for 25 years. And I stepped back this year as I enter the elder statesman aspect to make more room for a younger carver that's going to actually try because I'm jaded and cynical and don't really care. And I'm just pretty much blocking out an eagle to take home and finish later. And they let me do that anyways. And it was a unique and one of the starting into that role. I'm like a Facebook reporter, but I'm not in there brutally because it's hard work. It's got to be close to war as work as art gets. And it's so industrially in the beginning, especially with the big saws. And you end up with this fine, delicate art in some place, but the beginning is just, you got a 5-foot bar on a 5-foot log, and you're making these giant cuts and, you know, sometimes wrong, which is what we call lessons. No, there's no mistakes. There's just a change in plans, and a lot of that goes on. So it's been interesting. I have the undisputed world record for being beat in more chainsaw carving competitions than anyone else, because I went to the very first one, and, winning wasn't I mean, I didn't take it I didn't turn it down, but it wasn't my primary motivator. And a lot of the competitions and the shows, especially for the new guys just starting out, it's school. It's where you go to school. It's how you learn. You learn to consolidate your moves and be so efficient with your movement, which is, the more efficiency you show,
Yeah,
the
no, I
less
mean, it's
work you have
like
to.
fighting in a way. I mean, I've watched endless hours of in terms of footwork, there's footwork, getting around and navigating around this huge stump. Um, we talk about these, I mean, they're framed ostensibly as competitions, and there is the competitive element, but, like, really, it's like the most egalitarian competition I've ever been exposed to, and that was one of the thing that really impressed me about it is, like, I think what attracts people to it is the culture and the community of this thing. I mean, the way you guys is set up so often the prize money's spent real thin. It's spread real thin. In most competitions, it's like first, second, and third place. Sometimes you guys have 12, and that's so you can spread the prize money so that people can have gas money. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of
Usually not
like
paying the rent with the prize money.
yeah, and but it's designed that way, and the more I spent time around that community, and, I still come to competitions, and I always come see you down in Squim, and, I kind of put 2 and 2 together, and I sorta see how and as much as anybody, I feel like you're the nexus of this thing. You're the granddaddy of it. You're the guy that, like, I mean, I don't know, you're the kind of the glue that holds it all together from where I'm standing, and it seems to me in a
I
way
can't
that
even
you've
explain it, but I know what you're talking about.
You've created something that actually sort of mirrors that tramp logging culture. Let's
That is
talk
that
about that
is a good
intersection.
point. That I'm glad that you noticed that, because the tramp loggers were a bunch of rough, tough, independent fellows that were if they were g that were good at their job, so they could go anywhere. If they didn't like the way they made the sandwiches at some camp in Oregon, they go to the next camp. They could go work anywhere. Chainsaw carvers are like that as well. They're independent. They can go anywhere in America, in the world at this point, and make money. And, you, if you we have a saying in the game that if you're a good carver, you can go anywhere. If you're a bad carver, you have to go where there's not other carvers. And once you
Yeah.
get to be a good carver, you can go anywhere.
So you've got all these rugged individuals, and yet they are kind of a ragtag community. I mean, you particularly, you'd give people the shirt off your back. You'd give them the chain off your saw, as I said in my blurb. I
I
feel
like that.
like explain
And I
the
have done that.
explain the I guess the impetus there's just a certain generosity to it, and I feel like they learn from you. I don't know that all of these guys come in here as big, open-hearted guys. I think, like me, they go in maybe expecting one thing and saying, "Wow, this is like it's kind of like a weird sort of big ragtag family," and I
Oh,
come back to
absolutely.
I remember the year of the competition, I think 2000, 2001. There was that carver, Brad Sharp from Oregon, and his 2 children died. They drowned in the river.
That's
And
horrible.
I just remembered it was awful, but I just remembered how that community rallied around him, you know what I mean? Like, I remember
Yes,
seeing him the next year, and, I mean, clearly the guy was still traumatized, you know what I mean? Just
I
sort of
do.
glazed
I do. It
over,
was
and yet he came there because he knew he'd have lots of questions, there'd be a lot of talk and whispering and, like, people, 'cause he's bereaved, and it was just amazing to me just to see the support of that. Again, it's very Steinbeckian. You have these, so many of you guys are like a dichotomy. You're like these big, like hard drinking, rough, swearing, like, dudes, but like they're just a lot of softies too.
it's, the biker Vikings of the art world. But just a couple weeks ago, there was a carver that had a mishap down at the Ocean Shores show, and,
What is it?
you know
Like loss of a digit or something, or
No, he was, keeping an eye on, a buddy's house where they went to Portland, and the guy's 16-year-old daughter had a party, and the kids were running up and down the road, and he went over there and told him, "Quit driving up and down the road drunk," and they snuck up behind him and hit him with a baseball bat, and,
jeez.
put him in Tacoma intensive care for a week or 2, and the next day, the carvers instantly had an auction and raised him up like $4,000 the next day at that show because, carve her down. We got to help Jay.
And the
And,
same thing happened when your garage shop burned down a couple years back.
oh my
I
God,
That was
that was,
disastrous because your
that,
shop is more important than your house. I've been to the Gulch, I've been to your spread, and the
it
shop
was,
is the biggest structure on the house is tiny. It's the shed,
yeah,
that was it.
yeah, it
And you
was
kind of lost
120.
everything, all that work, all that tools, and like within days, you guys, like people raised you
Within
money.
hours, the next morning, I was out there looking at 120 feet of charred remains thinking, man, this is fucked. I'm going to be pushing a wheelbarrow for a month just to make it not there. And people started showing up with dump trucks and dump trailers and excavators and help. And there must have been 30 people show up. And it was like teary eyed, the Jimmy Stewart movie. It's a Wonderful
Well,
Life.
yeah.
It was like that at the end. It was unbelievable. People were stopping by in the road and giving me money and clothes because most of my work clothes and everything were in there. And it was Carver's, the Carver world and the South Whidbey community, both worlds really overlapped there. I mean, I had Carvers from the East Coast that I didn't even really know well send me checks that were like, damn, damn.
And
And
this just speaks so much really to your high character. I mean, this is why people rally around you. This is why you're beloved. This is why you're bigger than life. How does the son of Dirty Dick Backus end up being basically a saint among men? I mean, because your dad, again, dude, that guy, I mean, he,
people that I grew up around expected me to repeat that cycle, but I knew from an early age that whatever he did, if I do the opposite, I'll probably be okay.
that so give me some Dirty Dick Backus exploits so the listeners can kind of get a sort of I mean the guy's here one day but he's mostly gone, but when he shows up, what does your life look like? Tell me some of the exploits. I mean, I know you
Well,
ended up driving a lot of strange roads at 13 because your old man was just had you driving across straight lines, then he was too drunk to drive, and it's like, here, you're 13, take the wheel, that kind of stuff.
oh, he did. One time we went up to Tahola, which is on the south side of the Quinault Reservation. Queets is on the north side, and the Quinaults own all that beach in between. And back in those days, you could drive across the reservation from Tahola to up by north of Quinault to Rainier's truck type of place by taking the road across the Raft River. And he had bought a truck for hauling shake blocks. This would have been 1973, is before he was banished to Alaska. And he had a little Datsun station wagon with a 4-speed in it. And we pulled up there to Tahola and he bought the truck. And then he said, okay, you drive the little car and me and Dick Robbins are going to drive the truck and try and keep up. And he grabs a half gallon of whiskey out of the car and it gets in the truck and just takes off. And I'm like, I'd never even driven the son of a bitch before. I had a little 4-speed on it. And he went across the river and then I mean, it's like 20 miles of logging roads and I'm doing my best to keep up. And we get up to the place and it's probably 2, 3 in the afternoon. And I'm thinking we're going to go back to Aberdeen so we can have dinner. And, but him and Dick Robbins said, well, let's go to the Clay Lock Lodge and have a drink because they got a bar up there. And back in those days, where you just recently were there, that little store that's out front
Right,
had
right.
some gas pumps in front of it.
Yeah, the merch.
So they drove the truck up
Merc.
there, and it was like an international with a 16-foot bed, big square bed on it. And they went up there and started getting all boozed up. And me and Tony, my buddy, we hung out on the beach. You do what 13-year-olds do there. You walk around and look at everything, and then that gets boring. Eventually, they got kicked out of the bar. And it's probably 6 in the afternoon. It was still light out. And as he comes walking out, he grabs a 10-speed bike because there's a whole bunch of 10-speed bikes there. Because back in those days, the 10-speeders just were rode in packs up and down the road. Logger truck drivers hated them. Loggers didn't like them at all. A bunch of dirty hippies and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you shouldn't do that. Here's the kid telling the dad, you should not steal that bicycle. He goes, I'll let that dirty hippie get another bicycle. He can hitchhike. And I'm like, fuck. He throws it on the back of the truck and then he roars out of there and he goes between the store and the gas pumps in the front corner on the driver's side of the truck, caught the gas pump and plucked it off like a rotten tooth. And he was going fast enough to where it drug the gas pump out there. The back wheels bounced over it and hit the ground. Gas is 30 feet in the air. First thing I did is got out and put that bike back because I know he would have rolled over on me on it real quick, like. And the guy comes and turns the thing off, and here comes the owner out there, and he's a little bit upset about everything. And he's like, well, what about my gas pump? Who's going to pay that? And Dick's like, what about my fucking truck? Fuck Rockefeller. Send him the bill. And he threw such a fit. And then the forest ranger showed up, or the park ranger showed up with a big black flashlight. And Dick's buddy said, put that away or I'll shove it up your ass. So in order to pacify them, they said, well, you guys, if you go out to the farthest cabin in the back and stay, we'll give it to you. Just go back there and leave in the morning. And
Wow.
he got away
How
with
about that?
I mean, now they would have been drunk.
The guy had 9 lives.
Oh my God. I had one hard cherry pie that Tony and I split for dinner. And my mom didn't know that story till she read it in the book. She goes, I never heard that one. I said, well, I couldn't really come home and tell you about, you wouldn't let me go see Dad no more.
Yeah, well, there'd been a couple times. I mean, he'd show up at school and I cringe to think, there'd be so many Amber Alerts out for you these days, the way he would just show up at your school, pull you out of school, have you drive him across straight lines to go do whatever.
Well, the school was somewhat compliant with it because when Dick and Judy were together, and I was in 4th grade, and the teacher didn't like me. I guess I wasn't getting good grades. Got straight Fs. I wasn't stupid, but I got Fs, and I screwed up. I don't know what I did. And the big fat vice principal, I think he just liked swatting little boys or something. And I went home and said, hey man, I'm gonna get swats tomorrow. And they were probably fighting and didn't even pay much attention to me, I thought. And the next day I'm sitting in class and I'm about half terrified. I got to go get swats by this guy. Then I hear a commotion down in the teacher's lounge. And then I heard clearly Dirty Dick's voice, you big fat motherfucker, whatever you do to my kid, I'm going to do to you. And so that was the end of me getting swats. But ever since then, the school people just kind of let him do whatever he wanted when he showed up to get me. And
See, I wish I'd have had a Dirty Dick around to do that because I got swatted in, elementary school. I got swatted in middle school. I even got swatted in high school by the woodshop teacher had this big oar that said "ouch" in it
I'll
with
bet
a
he had a
router.
good
My
one.
mom gave him permission. I
Oh
wish
my
I'd have had
God.
a Dirty Dick Backus to. So
Yeah.
your fate was it's interesting because of my friends, you're one of the people that was kind of on his life. I've been on my life path since I was 8 years old. Like I was born to do what I was gonna do. That's when I started writing as a form of escape, and you've always kinda known you've been on your life path since the beginning. Little Stevie Backus did he see a world beyond the world of carving and
Not
constant
really.
poverty? Did you see beyond poverty, or did you just kind of accept, "Look, I'm always gonna be kinda
Well,
scrapping it out. I'm always
one of
gonna
the
be."
things is also with the chainsaw carving for me, especially when I was young, I wasn't good at sports to the dismay of the coaches because I was a
Oh
big
god, you'd
lad.
have made a hell of a pulling guard, dude. You're like
Oh,
6'5" and,
yeah, join the hippies instead. And I didn't know shit about mechanics, so I couldn't talk about rear ends or transmissions or engines or none of that stuff. But when I got the carving deal came along, at a pretty young age, 13, 14, we're doing the carving, even though I was burning and brushing and doing lifting heavy stuff. It became the life path. And then when I was 16, that's when we all moved to Whidbey Island. When my grandfather had financed his hippie children to the farm. So in some ways, it was portrayed from the family end as this is what we're going to do. And even though it kind of all fell apart, I was so into that. And then when I was in my early 20s and started going to the competitions on my own, and I wasn't going to finish high school, I wasn't going to go to college. I had chances to work in Alaska and did so and made good money, but I was drunk on Friday and broke on Monday, no matter what I did. So I'm going to do what I want to do
can't take the tramp logger out of
type of
and
deal.
yeah.
And I wanted to do the carving and the competitions, especially. And I made a conscious decision then that this is what I'm going to do. This is my career. And the only thing you could do in those days is go to wherever other carvers were, which were the contests. And it's all I wanted to do was that after a bit. And I didn't mind being broke because I grew up broke. I knew how to survive. I wasn't going to go hungry. I knew how to eat. I knew how to feed myself. And as long as I had saw gas and food, I could make it work. Sometimes the rent had to wait, which is why I bought my place, because I wasn't going to move a bunch of logs again. And where I'm at today, I've been there for nearly 40 years because it became my solid foundation. You got to have that place where you go charge your batteries. Everyone that lives a certain type of lifestyle, you got to have that retreat where you go charge your batteries so you can go back out and do it again.
Yep.
But I also had to go out to make money everywhere.
I think I probably asked you this. I remember asking a lot of the carvers when we were making the documentary, what I know, I know that, when people ask me this question, what would you be if you weren't a writer? And I'm like, IV drug addict or yelling at parking meters, something like that. What would you be if you weren't a carver? If you didn't, what would you envision yourself? I mean, it's like you never even really question other options. Like me, I'm just limited every other option. I have to be a right. I have to make this work because I don't have any other skills. You have more skills than me. I mean, you can lift heavy shit. I don't even have that skill.
Well, that is diminishing. Everything's getting bigger, hairier, and closer to the ground, as it turns out.
I hugged you about 2 weeks ago and I'm still got sawdust on my clothes, by the way.
Oh, that's funny. Down in Oregon a couple weeks ago, in the carving world, I was a judge down at the reed sport competition. They got a couple carvers from Japan that come there, Maru and Ota, and they always try the bowing, but I get them in the hug. They know that it's coming.
Yeah, squeeze the life out of people.
And
I
would do,
You 6'5"?
No, I'm a 6'2".
You're only 6'2"? You're just
with
big,
boots on and stuff,
broad.
I'm about 6'5".
Okay, because you take up a lot of space. You're like a big dude. I don't mean that in a denigrating. I just mean you take up more space than just about any human I know. And I know people that are taller, but you're just a big dude.
I'm down to a Seville 330.
Yeah, well, I'm almost there myself, dude, and I'm not 6'2".
Yeah.
So you didn't answer my question. What would you be if you weren't a carver?
Boy, that's a hard one. That's a tough one. I don't think I would be in the art industry in any way, because I don't know how that would work, because nothing else appeals to me, painting or any of that kind of stuff. And the thing about the chainsaw carving is you don't have to go to galleries. You don't have, I mean, you can go sell it, like you say, on a street corner type of deal. And I've often wondered, I don't know, maybe probably be some hillbilly with a sawmill, something like that, because I like
It'd still
working
be
with
wood,
wood.
though, man.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
still be in the wood end of things, I think, because of the logging early on. I never, early on, I could see that the tramp logger industry, if you will, people it wasn't going to be, especially after Spot Owl stuff, the whole industry changed. And I
Talk
think
to me a little bit about that. Talk to me a little bit about that because I like to go a little broader and get into the spotted owl and how that affected the industry.
well, the
Whereas
spotted owl affected the industry in a huge way because, for one, when they quit logging on national forests, which is where the most of the logs would come for sawmills, the
and it was
that's why
fur
sawmills
mostly,
dried
right?
up.
They lived in stands of pure fur more. I mean,
I'm not sure at the
yeah.
biological part of it. It turns out they're getting moved out by barred owls, not necessarily the logging. So but it was, it was like the snail darter in Tennessee. It was an excuse to use the law to kind of slow the logging industry down. And as they're getting more efficient along them lines, but the private companies, Weyerhaeuser and all the big ones, they could sell their timber to Japan, China. So they could sell the export timber. Where the spotted owl actually worked out really good for me was I did the Puyallup Fair for like 40 years. And during the early 90s, once the spotted owl came in and they quit logging in national forests, they could still sell timber for export. And so right around down American Lake and Spanaway, Parkland, North Tacoma, there are tons and tons of big fir trees. And they would, logging companies, tree companies, they'd come in and they'd buy 2 or 3 trees in someone's backyard, bring a crane down, lift them out because they could sell them for the most money. And every grandma in Tacoma had a 6-foot stump and some money. And that's when I started carving stumps in people's yards as my main gig. I could leave Whidbey Island. I could go
Oh,
anywhere in
like the
Puget
stump
Sound.
in place
The
versus the
stump
stuff
in
that moves
place.
around. Oh, yeah. Okay. So back to the commercial logging thing in the Spotted Owl. Like it kind of felt like the Politica sort of manufactured that narrative to where you would see the bumper stickers that say owls don't pay taxes or something. It's kind of like they pit the environmentalists against the loggers, but like the real problem with logging, as we've touched on earlier, was well, first of all, greed. I mean, in the 80s when they had like just on the Olympic Peninsula alone, they had like 40 outfits running around the calendar all year long. It took them near a century to log it to splinter. But by the time the
Unbelievable.
80s came around, they were just overlogging, exporting this stuff to Japan, who was just stockholder. They just sat on it and then sold it back to us. So greed and technology really kind of killed logging more than the spotted owl debate,
Oh, I would
right?
s yes, easily. Probably the hydraulic equipment. If you got one guy that can sit on a track machine, cut a tree down, run it back and forth, cut it to length, the only thing he has to do other than run levers is type in what kind of wood it was. And before it would have took, 5, 6, 8 guys
So
to
what
log
the
that
guys
same.
that took those jobs, were they loggers or were these kind of like college kids? I mean, was there any sort of like, you know, because these guys they're almost like scabs or whatever, you know what I mean? The 40 guys aren't going to have a job because this guy's running a processor or whatever they called. Were these the same people? Were these just loggers who adapted to the
You could put
machine?
it to any industry. Human beings have always used what was most efficient to make their work easier
On
from
increased
whatever. I
profit
mean,
too.
you wouldn't want to go back and be a writer if you had to use a quill and ink for everything,
Oh god,
and
even a typewriter. I can't even imagine, dude. I
yeah,
mean,
so
I can go off for like 3 paragraphs and go, "Oh, that sucks," and just erase it and start over. I can't imagine, like, I have to type all that again? Oh,
that would be well, for me, I as limited as my writing is, I enjoy the storytelling, but if it wasn't for a computer keyboard, there's no way. There's
yeah.
no
Well,
way.
I mean, again, I think one of the things I really like about your storytelling is it's just so oral. It's so, I use the word matter of fact. I just say I don't even mean plain spoken. I just mean it's very direct. I mean, you're telling the story and you're
It
not
simply
trying to
happened.
yeah, you're not trying to stuff happened and it's stated sort of matter of factly and you're really good at like setting stuff up. You know,
Thank you.
careful eye on character, context, setup, and payoff. I mean, they often work just more like a joke kind of. There's like a little just sort
I
of
started writing a
like
lot of times, it was for my kids. It's like, "You guys ain't got it that bad. Here's what I went through," and they heard a lot of the stories, of course, and, so I'd write them because, it's like doing everything that Dick Backus did not do seems to be working along the lines of being a family man and a father. Stay married, raise your children, do the right thing. They do have to kinda run off with me on some of these
stay out of
shows and my
prison.
stay out of
Yeah.
prison, yeah.
Besides myself, I mean, I really don't. I mean, I have some musician friends who've pulled it off, and several other writer friends. But like, tell me, I know what it's like firsthand trying to raise a family as an artist. It's the forever you live it's the gig economy, right? Like nobody's writing a check for you unless you're hustling for it. Talk to me about raising a family under what I know because I've been there. Has to be strained circumstances. You don't know how much or when you're going to get paid. Sometimes there's always the looming threat of cash flow.
Oh, boy.
There's a lot of bust and boom cycle financially. Like, talk to me about
It
raising your family. Like, what
certainly
is
if
the
it's certainly a feast or famine sort of deal, and it's one of the reasons shows are important. And, the competitions, back to that, but we've created an environment where we got an educated buy-in public that come there, and they're coming there for carvings, and they come up and they say, "Hey, I got a stump in my yard." That allowed me there's so many times that I had enough gas money to get to the job. So I had to get there. Hopefully it didn't break down. And I even got a formal letter from AAA kicking me out.
Wow, I've got to be close because I use my 300-mile tows, and I mean I usually use it's like a 80-mile tow for
Yeah,
AAA
they'll
plus.
do it. So at any rate, there was a lot of times. I mean, the why, that's why, yeah, I almost wanted to take my son to go see Disneyland. Same place across
From Mike Munoz from Lamboy, yeah.
type of deal. And, but when they're kids, they don't understand why they can't do like what the other kids get to do. And,
What do you mean, like expensive summer camps? Is that what we're talking
well,
about?
a
Ski bus?
computer. My daughter, when
Yeah.
she was 13, she did a great report, 2 pages, written very neat. Everything spelled right, spaced right, punctuated right. And the teacher said, no, it's got to be on a computer. Well, we didn't have a goddamn computer. So I had to go up to my buddy Jeff's house and she could do it up there. And it kind of like, we gotta fix this. And we did a show and it was typical chart. I did a show, went to the show. It's like it's almost over. It's a contest, and I got like $40, and it's like I've got nothing else to get back, home. And then 2 hours later, I won the show. I sold all of my carvings. I went for $40 to $6,000 in cash
Well,
in
we know
2
what Dirty Dick
hours.
we know what Dirty Dick Backus would have done with that $6,000. It'd have been
Yes.
gone in the morning. You'd probably have several maternity suits filed
Yeah, you're right.
against you, and
I did gain a
your
brother when I
car is
turned
gone.
50. I gained an older brother when I turned 50.
Oh yeah, that he didn't tell you about that. How did that work?
It worked out good. He's a great guy, Redmond, Oregon. He's
Of course, you would welcome him right into your life.
well, yeah, you know what? You got to really be a fuck up. I mean, we hang out with all the broken toys on Broken Out Toy Island the whole time. You can't be judgmental. And
I mean, I admire that so much. You say that, but like it's so easy to be judgmental. I mean, I'm a loyalist too. I mean, I give people many chances. I mean, we did an episode on grudges, one of our early episodes, and it's, it's really I don't hold grudges until I do, and I'm really hard. You're one of the least begrudging, most forgiving people I know, and yet you have had like really you've had more adversity than just about anybody. I mean, just
you know
I
what?
read memoirs about people whose lifestyle growing up wasn't nearly as hard as yours, and here you're talking about, "Oh, these guys are a bunch of characters, and I learned grit, and I learned determination," but so many people with that background would just be like, I don't know, there'd be an element of victimhood to it, I guess.
Well, that yeah, that don't that's you don't want to because no one cares for one. But Ed Doss down in Westport,
Ed
he was
Doss.
such a nice. He was a he told me he said, Steve, I don't have any enemies in Westport. I simply have people I do not associate with, and I've tried to practice that. So people who are on my radar, especially nowadays with Facebook and stuff, people put on certain shows and stuff. If I like them, I'm sharing their stuff and all that kind of stuff, no matter who it is. But if I don't like them, I don't have to be against them, but I don't have to be for them. Plus, I get to write the history in ways, and I don't have to mention some people.
Yeah, this ethos seems to be it seems to run through the community in general. I remember one gentleman whose name we don't need to mention it. We don't bring it the history, but when Tup and I were doing the documentary, we had a little problem with this gentleman. He actually, pulled a gun on us and had a little bit of a paranoid fit.
Would that
Like
be the
think
debacle in Deming?
Yes, the debacle in Deming. He was shooting at us as we, screeched away with our equipment, and then at the competition, he refused to be filmed and stuff like that, and there was a lot of tensions and stuff like that. But everybody was always trying to smooth it over, and ultimately, he came up and apologized and was like, you know what I mean? There's just this ethos among the community that like you can really fuck up bad and these people are going to let you back in their life. You just got to own it. And so like it was kind of nice. I think he just kind of felt left out because he was railing against the whole thing, grumbling, but then he was like, God, man, everybody's having fun. Maybe these guys aren't so bad. And then it all worked out. And I remember we were doing the one big shot where Conrad chased everybody with the big bar and yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. You've I don't know. And I know I give you all the credit for building this community, but that's what I saw. I just
I'm
feel
part
like
of it. I'm a leader in that aspect of it. I try to put the positive slant on pretty much anything that comes down because it's all forward motion. Even the stuff that's complete fuck ups, let's learn from it.
Yeah,
So we learn a lot.
he is Steve Backus. He's one of my favorite people. He's a genuine nice guy, character. For the memoirs we've been talking about, my favorite, You've Got to Be Shitting Me. These are like folk tales, dude, of Dirty Dick Backus and your mom and Marvin Crumb and the tramp loggers. And then the other one is Carve or Starve, which is a little bit more of the trajectory of your family, business kind
Carving
of.
stories.
Yeah, a little bit more about you and less about Dick. But tell us. We'll put some links. Tell us where people can purchase the book, because I think people need to. I have so many like literary friends, like other writers, that I go, I get it. I just want him to read it. Like Willie Vlatton, who was on last week, he would love. I'm going to send him a copy. I'm going to buy another copy of You've Got to Be Shitting Me. I'm going to send it to him because I know he's going to love it. He's going to recognize so much about your childhood, so go out and find him. Carve or Starve, and You've Got to Be Shitting Me. Steve Backus. Hey, and if I highly recommend, if you ever catch wind of your town or neighboring town has a chainsaw competition, go check it out. I mean, it's really fun to watch the guys carve. It's kind of like it comes with its own culture, like a Dead Show or something like that. And I know you guys talk about calling them dirty hippies, but there is actually a weird sort of intersection between hippies and loggers. Like they're more simpatico than you think, because there is a lot of this sort of communal living involved. I mean, they have more in common than they have not in common.
There's as many high school dropouts as there is college graduates in our game. And we're all doing the same thing. The backgrounds from a lot of these are pretty diverse, especially on the East Coast, and of course on the West Coast, the logging communities contributed heavily to us, and they know where to get the wood.
Well, next time you're in Squim, let me know. We got a date. We got a date in the garage. We don't have to go in the house. We can stay in the garage. Although the garage is a little fancier now. We might have to sit outside. It might be a little fancy for you, but
I don't have to take my clothes off this time, do I?
You never had to, Steve. That was entirely and always is. I know that you like to take your clothes off. It's kind of your calling card. And it's an impressive sight. We've talked about your large, let's call it Rubenesque figure. So thanks for being our fresh face in hell today, Steve. It's been a joy, and I hope to get another one of your sawdusty hugs soon.
Amen, brother. Thanks a lot.
You betcha.
Have a good day.
I like the idea of the figure that's in the stump or the log that they're carving out of. It reminds me of the Renaissance sculptors who would have a piece of marble and they'd see the figure in the marble and they'd be freeing the figure from the marble. And I kind of like to think, they look at the stump and they see a bear and they free the bear.
I'm gonna buy me a painted pony. I'm gonna ride away. Way out west, where life is best and the sun shines bright all day.
And who knows exactly who the first logger is that took a big chainsaw and hacked out a big chair on a stump or something out in the woods to be the first true person that actually tried to make art with a particular tool.
I've been carving for 5 years. I didn't do a bit of art. I mean, I didn't draw a straight line until 5 years ago.
If I wasn't a chainsaw carver, I'd probably be famous.
My name is Niall Thomas. I'm a chainsaw artist. I've been carving for about 18 years. If I wasn't a carver, I'd probably be depressed without the right to express my freedom.
Wow. I love the sense of power. I love the creativity. I started dancing.
Singing, hey, rippity-dee-dee, oh, way to the low, rippity-dee-dee-dee-dee, hey, rippity-dee-dee-dee, oh, way to the low, rippity-dee-dee-dee, ah.
The carvers are all a bunch of loners and almost hermit-type people. 90% of them are. They don't want anybody messing with them. And what Westport especially has done is create a a brotherhood.
And there might be a carver show up that we've never even met that could be an ass kicker. It happens. They come out of the woodwork. That's part of why Westport's a wide open show, is if you can show up there with a chainsaw, we'll feed you, give you some gas, and let you carve.
And my first Westport, I got there and I looked around and I felt like Wayne's World. I'm not worthy! I mean, these carvings and stuff. I thought I knew about chainsaw carving. I didn't know nothing about chainsaw carving. Westport, the scales will fall off your eyes.
Taking over my backyard, which is cool because I love it. They do some fantastic stuff. They're a great bunch of people, a lot of fun to hang around, and we hope to keep coming back year after year. It's been fantastic.
Singing, hey, rippity-dee-dee-dee, oh, way to the low, rippity-dee-dee-dee-dee, hey, rippity-dee-dee-dee, oh, way to the low, rippity-dee-dee-dee, ah-ha. Singing, hey, rippity-dee-dee-dee, oh, way to the low, rippity-dee-dee-dee, hey, rippity-dee-dee-dee, oh, way to the low, rippity-dee-dee-dee. Oh, day, oh, day, oh, day, oh, day, oh, day, oh, day.